during that time, November, early December, I had extreme fatigue, unrefreshing sleep. I had weak legs for doing nothing, post-exertional malaise. If I did anything, then I would just be wiped. Brain fog, eye pain. Eye pain was one of my big ones. Headaches, light and sound sensitivity, heart palpitations, shortness of breath, high voltage feelings inside my brain, buzzing, lots of wired and tired. That was very frustrating. And the hand tremors, heat intolerance, and then even occasional vertigo. So yeah, I can't say I had those all at the same time, but in a short period of time. I'm working pretty much full time and going out. We just actually had someone over for dinner on Friday night, went to someone else's house on Saturday night, went to someone else's house on Sunday night. Now that's unusual for us to do that much in one weekend. But yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm living pretty normally besides the exercise, which, I think I'm going to just, again, I think that was a bigger issue. I liken it to if you have a surgery, let's say you had pins in your leg. Right? At some point, the leg is going to be healed, but your body is going to take longer to catch up and rebuild stamina. And that's where I feel like I am. I'm just rebuilding stamina. I do not have chronic fatigue syndrome anymore. I can just say that with every bit of knowing.
How's it going, guys? Miguel here from CFS Recovery. In this video, we have Tracy, who's been on quite the journey over the last 3 to 4 years dealing with CFS, a lot of ups and downs. At her worst, she was actually completely bedridden for a few months, and now she's really turned things around. And I just wanted to bring her on here to share some of her inspiring story as a thriver. So Tracy, it is amazing to have you on here. Want to quickly introduce yourself to everybody?
Sure. Yes, I'm Tracy. I live near Raleigh, North Carolina, and I'm 54 years old.
There we go. Well, welcome to the call, Tracy. Can't wait for you to share some golden nuggets, share some of your story and everything you've dealt with, because you've made tons and tons of progress, especially in the last handful of months. We really turned a corner. So before we jump into, your full story, how did this all start? And actually leading up to this illness, when it all hit you in 2020, what was life like? And were there signs that this was coming up?
Yes. Well, I'm a realtor. My husband's a realtor, so I worked full time. I have 3 kids, although at that time I had just still one at home, and I was busy, just really busy, and like anybody else. But I did, looking back now, I definitely had plenty of things that were symptoms, or my nervous system was trying to get my attention, and I just ignored it. I had tremors even, and I would need to take more naps than I felt like I needed to, and headaches with exercise, and brain fog. But they were just little enough that it didn't seem that serious.
Got it. So you were experiencing some of these symptoms, but you were still like quite functional. It wasn't really a big issue. So in 2020, was there something that kind of set it all off? It seems like a lot of people got hit in 2020 with either COVID or just stress or something.
Yeah.
For you?
Well, we sold our house late in 2019, and lots of people have asked me if I had COVID. I don't think so. I didn't. I thought the only symptom I had was just extreme exhaustion. But there were other symptoms as well. My tremors got worse, and I had light and sound sensitivity and brain fog. But at the time, I just thought I was super tired. And so I went and did all the tests at the doctor's office. And my doctor was pretty much like, if this keeps up for 6 months, then you have chronic fatigue syndrome. And so with COVID, we were still working as realtors here. We could work, but life was just crazy. So it wasn't as noticeable because we were home more, and I could still be successful in work, but maybe not working as many hours. So I definitely had more symptoms, but I didn't recognize it until I crashed in 2022.
Got it. So it took about 2 years for you to like really hit kind of rock bottom. But for 2020, when the stuff really started kicking off, what were some of the initial symptoms you have, and like how did that affect your activity level? What did that look like?
Yeah, well, I mean, at that time I was bedridden. I called in my mom, actually. I'm married and have a son, and he was actually similarly sick. So we were like, is this some kind of weird? I mean, he could have had COVID. We could have both had COVID. Who knows? But we were both like, I was completely bedridden. And like I said, light and sound, I couldn't really watch much television. I joke I could watch Hallmark movies because they were the most lame or, not very exciting.
You'd switch your
And
on those.
yeah, and my tremors did get a little bit worse and brain fog, just not being able to concentrate. But pretty much I just wanted to sleep a ton.
Got it. Got it. And then how long did it take for you to start being able to kind of function again? Was that in 2020 where you kind of bounced back a little bit?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, I started working again, probably 6, 8 weeks, but I ended up switching companies because I was losing clients because I couldn't, my energy was just not super predictable. And then I went to a different company where we had some different kinds of support. So it was easier for me to not see the actual ramifications in my life. Where if I was just doing it myself, I probably would have noticed it sooner or been willing. I mean, maybe it was just my pride not wanting to admit I had CFS.
Yeah,
But
got
yeah,
it.
so I was able to work, but still there was plenty of limitation in my
Yeah.
life.
And okay, so you're dealing with that. I'm guessing you're going to the doctors at this time, trying to figure this out. What are they saying initially? 2020, 2021. What are they telling you, and are they giving you things to try?
Yeah, well, I had actually, being the age that I am, I had done some synthetic testosterone and some other hormones, and that I think that gave me some boosts in a way. And so but it may have masked what was really going on. So I didn't go to the doctor a lot at that point because she had already told me that if it kept up, um, so I was just winging it, I guess. As women often do, you just kind of get through it. And I wasn't really having any specific symptom that was alarming at that point. Um, Besides the tremors that probably would come and go. But again, I had had those for several years before
Mm,
2020.
got it. Okay, so let's fast forward to 2022, where things take another nosedive, and that typically happens with people, and it happened with me several times actually, where they kind of get hit with this thing, then they build life back up to a certain point, and then they end up, either over pushing or they catch something else, and then boom, it tanks even lower. So what was that like for you? And was there a certain trigger that caused you to have that dip?
Yeah, I really don't know that I started working out more and I was playing pickleball and doing Pilates and my legs would feel weak, but I would kind of push through because I didn't know what that was. It was just like, why is this doing this? So I really honestly don't know. I didn't feel like I had something super stressful and I didn't have a virus. I think my body maybe a little bit not loving exercise. So I'm gonna have to work. I'm gonna have to work slowly or back into that. I was having issues before, so I think maybe it was just the exercise level, but it wasn't even that much. But it was enough for me, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, got it. So you were exercising a good amount, and then now we dip again, right? So what was the timeline around that? It was 2022.
2022, just like November 1st. Like I was fine on Halloween. We were giving out candy, and the next day I was
Just hit
wiped.
a,
Yep,
yeah, hit a
yep.
wall. What
And
what did that look like?
pardon me.
What did that look like? Hitting a wall? Were you back in bed basically?
Oh yeah, totally. Completely in bed. Now, before I really realized it was chronic fatigue syndrome and watched some of your videos, I was still kind of trying to do activity, not really knowing what was going on. But so during that time, November, early December, I had extreme fatigue, unrefreshing sleep. At some points, I couldn't sit up for longer than 5 minutes, and I would just be like, I feel crummy. I had weak legs for doing nothing. Post exertional malaise. If I did anything, then I would just be wiped. Brain fog, eye pain, a lot of eye pain because I did more cognitive type work, and so eye pain was one of my big ones. Headaches, light and sound sensitivity, heart palpitations, shortness of breath, tight chest. I did actually go to the doctor at that point because that was concerning me. I was
Hmm.
like, what is this? um, High voltage feelings inside my brain, buzzing, lots of wired and tired. That was very frustrating. And the hand tremors, heat intolerance, and then even occasional vertigo. So yeah, I can't say I had those all at the same time, but in a short period of time.
Yeah, you definitely been through the trenches, and that all like just came on that November 2022. It hits you hard. So
Yeah.
how long were you in bed for after that? And like, what
Um,
was your, were they the ones kind of taking care of you and stuff? And was
yeah,
it tough?
I could go downstairs and get something for breakfast and lunch usually, just literally go to get something, and then they would bring me dinner. So I wasn't with anyone pretty much at all. So for a while, and then I would just kind of slowly try and come back, and but it was slowly over time. So probably by February, I was more couch bound, and then I
Mhm.
started to be able to be, do more little by little during that time.
Got it. And what was that like, getting hit a second time? Because I've been through that a handful of times, and for me, it's almost just like a punch to the gut, and it felt like all that hard work I did over the last like year or two was just erased, and it's like I'm
Yeah.
in even worse position than I was 2 years ago. So what was that like for you?
Yeah. Well, I didn't necessarily think of it as a second time because I didn't own it the first time, maybe. Um, but just the reality of what you're dealing with. I mean, the fear is just amazing. You're sitting there thinking, am I ever going to have my life back? I found that one Facebook page, when in the beginning, it was great because I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not crazy. This is happening to a lot of people. But the more I stayed on that page, it was people who'd had it for decades, but still stuck in fear and this cycle of drama. And so I didn't stay there very long, thankfully. My husband found an article from someone, and she was just like, I'm just going to say, she said, F it, I'm going to get better. And her story was that she did. And so then that is when I found you. It was the end of November. I just went searching. I was like, I'm going to figure this out. So yeah, I mean, it was a lot of fear because you just don't have no idea what you're dealing with and how long is it going to take, especially in the beginning. You have no clue what you're doing.
Terrifying. It's terrifying.
Yeah.
So you found this kind of like when you were almost at your lowest point, basically. So it was like the perfect timing to find CFS recovery. And I remember you joined the Facebook group. You were coming to the Facebook lives that we do for free in there.
Yeah, those
Um,
were great.
yeah. So at the time when you're getting those chest pains and you're going to the doctors, what are they saying then? Um, are they saying no, you're completely fine, or what is it? What did that look like?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, I went in for the chest. I think at that point, I was remembering back what the doctor had said before. And after doing some research, I'm kind of an analytical person, as you can tell from the sheet I sent you. So then by doing research, I was like, well, this is clearly what this is. But I was very nervous. I've never had any heart issues, never had even anxiety feelings before. Oh, I didn't say that in my list. Of course, feeling of major anxiety,
Yeah.
like physical anxiety.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, they were just like, yeah, your heart's fine. And so I was like,
God.
okay, well, I have chronic fatigue syndrome. Now what?
Yeah. So then what happened next, right? So you're bedridden, you're in the trenches. This is like your lowest point, November of 2022,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
So I found your stuff and I tried to watch that as much as I could. I was also researching other things until I got really comfortable with your content, and started to feel like this makes so much sense to me. And it wasn't a medication. It wasn't, buy this or do that. And the free videos were just really great, and I was very grateful for those. Although I would say if I had to do over again, I would have much preferred to take your class, and I think I would have gotten better way faster. Because thankfully, my mom watched some of the videos with me, which was a huge help. This is so isolating, and my spouse was like great. He was taking care of everything, but he didn't have a lot of energy to take care of me. Plus, he had his own fears. Like he's like, "Is our life over as we know it?" I think for the spouses, it's just a really scary thing too. And they have
Hmm.
no control over what's going on.
Hmm.
Um, and so I just was watching the videos and trying to do my best. And it was funny. One of my things that I learned is that overthinking is bad. but these were my weekly charts that I did.
Oh yeah.
I tracked
Tracking.
all kinds of stuff, and then that was daily, and this was weekly. So you can see
Oh yeah.
I was overthinking everything, but I didn't learn that until way later, not to do that. But I was very proud of myself for tracking all this nice stuff, thinking that it was helping me. But it wasn't. But I still was working off the principles, which is super helpful. But when I was watching even some of the videos of people recovering, they weren't all the way recovered. So I still was dealing with a decent amount of fear. That was earlier on in 2023.
Yeah.
So, but all this time too, I had even during 2020, 21, 22, 23, been dealing with a lot of the things that I think got me there, like the emotional aspects, which we can talk about later. But, the impact of ways that I was thinking or behaving that just were not serving me well. So I was bedridden, and then I was housebound, and just kind of slowly got better. I was doing little by little, slow. I watched those videos where you say, you expand your behavior or you expand and then you have an AP and you expand and you go up and you finally get there. But mine felt a little more like, like this. So that was hard. When you're very isolated, people don't really understand what's going on. So it's hard to find anybody that knows what the heck you're talking about. I don't have any friends that had this.
Yeah.
So it was tough. And then September and October, I started to feel better. Like I was doing more work, just on the computer, like 3 to 5 hours a day. Like I could concentrate. And but then after Thanksgiving, my brain just decided to shut down again. It's like, nope. And I honestly think I had one more really important thing to learn that I learned in September and October. In September and October, I did more work. I could work 3 to 5 hours a day on the computer. And I worked really intensely. And, but that was my mode. And so by the end of November, my brain just shut down, like done. And that was really scary to me because I was making such headway and I was so discouraged and I was alone and fearful and I was really starting to spiral. And I actually went on the Facebook page and there was a Facebook Live and she mentioned a couple things. And then that's when I learned about the academy. Like I didn't know that it existed before then. So then I talked to my husband about it and he's like, yes, let's do the academy. And that was a game changer because the first time I went on there, I mentioned this, brain fog happening. And she's like, oh yeah, it's normal when you get closer to the end of your recovery that you're gonna have more emotional. Like it was just like no big deal. And it just totally dissolved my fear. And we know in this that fear is what makes it all worse. Fear just makes our symptoms worse. So that was a huge game changer. And then things.
Do you remember which coach it was? Adrienne or Coach Krista?
I don't remember. It was one of the two of them. And then also at that time, that was pretty right around the time, which I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit, but when they started talking about gray behavior. So what I loved about the academy was, one, it helped if I was having a problem already to not go into fear because you just have no clue. And they know they've had so much more experience from themselves and from other people. And then the other thing is I could listen to other people's stories and then that might happen to me. And I'm like, oh yeah, that happens. It's no big deal. So just being able to alleviate the unknown and the fear was huge with that one. And then it also clarified or solidified the principles that you teach just by listening to the coaches or even other people in the group. It was just what I needed. It was so helpful.
Yeah, it sounds like you had that mind shift even just on your first call. So what made you kind of pull the trigger to join the academy? Because you were doing the Facebook Lives, you were in the group.
Yeah.
Was it because you found yourself slipping back a little bit and you're like, let me just solve this for good?
I didn't just slip back. I started to get into despair. I was starting to feel actually depressed. And
Yeah.
that isn't something that I felt regularly. And it was scary. I just was like, this is, yeah, just despair.
Yeah. Yeah. So you found yourself slipping, even the mindset was slipping, and then you're like, okay, let's just
Yeah.
go in and fix this thing once
Yeah.
and for all.
And
And
I'm a
then,
pretty, like, I think I lasted as long as I did because I generally have a more positive outlook. Like, I'm just kind of that personality. If I wasn't, I think I would have had to do it a lot sooner. Like, just because it's just a constant battle with your thoughts.
yeah. So in that first, even in your first call, it's like you were learning things that you wouldn't have known unless you saw it on a call or heard it in a video. But it sounds like it really clicked on that live call that, you get brain fog and mood swings towards
Yeah.
the end of the
I
recovery.
think just being able to ask specific questions, like the
Yeah.
videos are so helpful. And I'm just so eternally grateful for the free videos for where we were at that time. But to be able to talk to people and ask a question.
Yeah.
But in the group setting is especially good too, because just listening to other people's stories was really helpful. Like you could learn really good stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And what are some other things that you learned in the academy in your first, I mean, because you've only been in it for, we're talking about you joining in December, as in 4 months ago, 5 months ago, because right now it's April. It wasn't too long ago,
Yeah.
but in terms of your like activity level, where were you at in December, like right before joining?
Um, well, like I said, I had started doing more like work wise, but then, my brain stopped. I could still like go to the store and do stuff around the house. Like my physical activity for daily life was still pretty good. I could have people over to eat or to have coffee, go to the store, run errands. I wasn't really double stacking talking and music or talking and being at a restaurant. Um, so yeah, I was kind of there. We did go to Cancun, or not Cancun, the Dominican
Mhm.
in January, and that was nice. But still, I could go to dinner, but then I couldn't do any of the stuff afterwards, where there's like music and all that kind of
Mhm.
stuff. Um, so yeah, it slowly just started to get better over just little by little. My brain started to wake up. It just like slowly started to break. But I also learned from what I learned from that time in September and October, I was doing two things, and I think I really needed to learn these last two things before my body was going to let me go. And it
Yeah.
was one, the intensity at which I was working. Like just when I worked, I was working. I could get done in 4 hours, but someone else could get done in 8. But why? Like why was I doing that? I don't know. And
Mhm.
then the other thing I really realized is I was working a lot on adrenaline. Like in real estate, it could be good things. Like we were solving a problem, and I started to feel like excited and everything. And my husband left, and I was sitting there, and I felt some stuff, and I'm like, I don't really feel like this is a symptom. What is this? And I realized it was adrenaline, and I was
Mm.
like mind blown. Like, wow, just, I don't know that I could say I was addicted to it because it was just work levels. It's not like it's, jumping out of airplanes or anything, but it was a real game changer. Like, that was something that I really feel like I had to learn from that last bit, and why my brain was like, nope, we're not going back into this. And I'm so grateful. Like, I didn't want to go back into the bad habits that I had before. And
Mhm.
so after that point, I almost literally told my nervous system, like, I got this now. Like, I'm good. I have created safe spaces for myself. I mean, the list of things that I changed over the last 4 years is long, but I finally felt like I don't need my nervous system to be throwing this kitchen sink at me for me to protect myself. And
Got it.
so then in like early March, my husband got the flu. And so we had like two listings going active on the same weekend, and we had multiple showings and multiple offers, and it was super busy. And we had a buyer that needed a lot of attention. And so I had like 4 days in a row. The first day was 16 hours of activity, and the next was 12, and the next was 10,
And
and
we're
the next
talking about
was
like
8.
this was a month ago, right?
Yes,
Like this
yes,
March. It's
yes.
literally like a month ago.
And I was kind of panicked. I'm like, this is not good. Like, I should not be doing this. But I was also feeling okay. But it was still, this balance after you like live obsessed with should you do something or not.
Mhm.
um, I was fine. I didn't have an AP. I
Mhm.
was fine. And
You're
I,
anti-fragile.
what'd you say?
You were anti-fragile.
Yeah. it was amazing, and then I went only like a couple weeks after that, I went a trip to California. That's like completely across the country, 15 hours of travel one day
Wow.
and 2 full days in a conference. And I was a little nervous, there's people talking, there's music, there's a lot going on. I had been taking naps even before I went there. I didn't need a nap while I was there, and I was fine. Now I get tired, still, but it's a different kind of tired. I
Mhm.
mentioned this earlier. Like I really don't feel like I have chronic fatigue syndrome anymore. Um, like I feel like it's not dysregulated anymore. It's just there, giving me hints, saying, "Hey, maybe that's a little much." Um, but it's not any. It's just different. And I remember people asking that question in the academy. How do you know? And the coaches would give an answer. I don't even remember what the answer was. Um, but you just know. Like I would never have pushed myself. I'm kind of glad my husband got the flu. He probably wouldn't like me saying that because I would never have pushed myself because that's probably unwise, like black and white behavior to go from not doing that much to that much. And yet it was a gift because I could handle it. My nervous system was not freaking out anymore. And so, yeah.
Yeah. And it showed you, it was almost like a test on your nervous system. That's what we say. When we see it, it's crazy all the time. When people start getting way, way better, life tests them. Something happens that maybe, but most of the time, it's out of their control. Like your husband getting sick is out of your control. But, had that test happened maybe 6 months prior, you wouldn't have been prepared for that. But this was the ultimate test of your nervous system to show you how anti-fragile you are. And you had the tools. You were
Yeah.
prepared because you had been building yourself up to the certain threshold, learning how to pace, even just changing your mindset about so many things and improving that you were able to do a 16-hour day, that even to a normal person, it's exhausting. And you did it like coming out of CFS. So
Yeah.
it's so cool to see the pieces come together and for things to start clicking and your nervous system to shift like this. So instead of it like screaming at you to stop and put you in bed, now it's just like tapping you on the shoulder saying, "Hey, Tracy, got to be
Yeah.
careful." And then you're able to go in and be like, "Oh, I know, I
Yeah.
got you."
Which is normal. I think that's what it's doing to all of us, except for how
Yeah,
many of us like ignored it for years. Right. Like,
exactly,
so
exactly.
yeah, it
Like,
feels like it's supposed to feel.
yeah. So, learning to recognize what running on adrenaline feels like or felt like, that kind of gave you more tools to learn to pace yourself a bit better, right? In terms of physical activity, what are some other golden nuggets we can share with people in terms of like something that really helped you on the mindset side of things or any other big mind
Yeah.
shift?
Yeah. I have several and I thought about them because I wanted to share them. The first one was stop overthinking, like for people who are analytical to just stop it. Like once you like do your little due diligence and once you land on Miguel and decide that he knows what he's talking about, then put the rest of it away. Put your little stupid trackers away.
Oh man,
um,
overthinking, that's what gets a lot of us into this,
exactly.
whole
Yes.
reason we snowball. So it makes
Yeah.
sense that I think that's not what's going to get
Yeah.
you out. It's actually going to make things worse.
Yeah. The next one is like really full belief that it's just your nervous system. Because I think once you're able to really embrace that, which is hard, especially when you're earlier on and you're not so sure about that. But once you do, it's so easy to be like, oh, there's my crazy nervous system again, like whatever, and that is coupled with responding well to the symptoms. Like, okay, well, I've got this eye pain or I've got this stinks. I don't want this, but I'm just gonna go lay down or I'm gonna go do whatever. Just trying to respond better to those. I think those two go hand in hand. And those are like super critical basic stuff, but not
Mhm.
easy.
Yeah.
Another one for me, and I learned this later in the game, but accepting that recovery is predictably unpredictable. this is for being an analytical person. I went A plus B equals C, and it just doesn't work that way. You can't say, if I do this, then I'm going to get the symptom. If I do this, then I'm going to get, it's just not like that. You could get this symptom one time and this one another time. And that was like, I guess I like control. I don't
Yeah,
normally, I mean, I don't think I am normally, but apparently I am.
yeah,
But yeah, so that was good to kind of just let go of that.
yeah.
And then the gray, working in the gray has been like probably it later in the, like you said, what did you learn in the academy? That was huge. And I think that was kind of around the time when it was being introduced.
Hmm.
Like I was such a black and white person, all or nothing, drive, then take a nap or lay on the couch and watch some television, like I'm going to drive like the hardest one. And so learning how to live in the gray is been the biggest game changer for me. But not now, I don't have to be afraid of the black and white, because that's going to happen some in life, but
Hmm.
that's just not where I'm operating all the time. It would,
Hmm.
I'm curious to know if, like, through your coaching, does pretty much everyone who have this live in originally black and white? Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Like very extreme black and white. And all the coaches were black and white too.
Yeah.
Um, and it's crazy because when you are living in the black and white, and for people who don't know what that means, it's, like Tracy said, it's the all or nothing attitude. It's the extreme mindset. It's like, all right, I'm going to work either 12 hours or 14 hours a day, or I'm taking the day off. There's no like, nah, let's do 4 hours, let's do 6 hours. Or working out. It's like, for people who are working out, it's like 5, 6 days a week for multiple hours, or you take the week off. It's literally all or nothing. Um, we don't realize it when we're living that life. To us, it's normal. It's like the frog in the boiling water.
Yes.
But then once you go through recovery and you're forced to kind of, you know, rethink about how you want to live life, you go, oh, wait a minute, wow, almost everything I did was black and white.
Mm-hmm.
In the way I exercised for myself personally, in the way I studied in school, in the way I set my goals, in the way I ran my previous businesses, it was black and white. So once you start to gray things out and find that middle ground, you know, you start recovering way faster because you're
Yeah.
moving out of that emotional survival place in your brain. It's like if we were to take a microscope, you would see changes, physical changes happening between your synapses and in your brain. So it's really cool how that works. So that concept of living in the gray, do you find that it also helped you outside of recovery, like in the way you work, in the way
Oh,
you
totally. Yeah. I
on
mean,
life?
it's just, yeah, it's the best. I mean, it is so good. And I think what I kind of feel lucky that I had this happen, because I see so many people living in black and white, and I don't know how you get out of black and white unless you're put on your back for months
Mm,
on end. Like I mean, I actually had a mini recovery in the middle there. But I was going back to my old behaviors. So it
yeah.
was like, nope, we don't. And I feel like it's a gift. Like if we just go back to our old behaviors, what do we learn? And so yeah, the gray stuff is game changer all the way through my whole life. Yeah.
Same for me. Like I didn't realize it at the time, but as I was recovering, as I was getting out of the hospital, that's what I was implementing. But Coach Junior is the one who kind of put a name on it and came up with a theory and solidified it. But if you think about it, like responding well to symptoms, that's technically trying to live in the gray, not being so extreme about certain things.
Hmm.
So it's interesting because once you understand a few core principles, they all like mesh together, and then everything like kind of clicks into place, and then you can make more progress in 3 months than you have in like 2 years. Like we've seen it so
Absolutely.
many times, and you've seen
Yeah.
it with like so many people in the academy who've had this for decades or years. It's like
Yeah,
clicks, progress goes through the roof. So it's
for
really,
sure.
really interesting. So, Tracy, there's a lot of people watching this right now who are where you were, when you were in the trenches, where you were like maybe a year ago or even 6 months ago, right? these people are in the trenches and maybe they're just coming across this channel for the first time. And just now they're seeing that it's possible to recover from this. What are some words of encouragement you can share with them, being a few steps ahead of them?
Yeah, there's hope. This is so full of fear and uncertainty when you are sitting there laying in your bed and you can't talk to anybody or do anything. I think that there's hope. You can recover. And I watched other people, along the process. Um, but I didn't see a lot of videos at that time. There weren't a ton of people who had fully recovered. And so there's hope, just knowing and doing what your videos say. And if they can be part of the platinum, like you had the jumpstart back then. And I think I would have appreciated doing that sooner, to be able to talk to people and kind of get the information faster, more organized, and then having people to talk through. I think I probably would have recovered faster. And if you can't do that, the Academy is amazing. Like, I totally highly recommended that. But yeah, just moving forward and learning the principles that you teach. I mean, like I looked at a lot of other stuff. I watched other people's Facebook pages and videos, and your content just resonated. I'm a little more scientific, and so even though your stuff wasn't super sciencey, there was still stuff that made so much sense to me and I did research some things scientifically that also confirmed some of the stuff that you were saying. So to me, it's just like, find something that's a road to recovery that's saying, I will recover. Like, maybe I will, I don't know if I will, that's not going to get you there. Like, you can recover. And on the Academy, I watched plenty of people leave that were recovering, or they were close, right? Like, I'm still on because I bought 3 months, got one free. And so I can still pop on there if I want to. But yeah, like, I think that was great. The other thing too, and I don't know if you were going to get to this, but the nervous system doesn't think we're safe. And I think maybe in your platinum group, there's more focus on what are the things in our or stress threshold that are staying there that we got to get out, like, so that we free up so that we can have normal everyday stuff in the stress threshold. And I mean, I have a list of at least 8 things, major things that changed in my life that eradicated a lot of that stress. And I think that's really an important thing to note, that while you're doing this other thing, when you can, like when you're first brand new, you're not thinking about these things because you're just trying to function enough to get through the day. But when you start having a little bit of space, I think that we have to fix those, or we're going to end up in the same place.
Hmm. Yeah. So lots of gold there. Essentially, a few things to take away from what you just said. Believe in recovery. Like, you have to believe. Like, that's one of the biggest things, because you could be doing all the right stuff, the right actions, saying things to yourself, but if you don't actually believe it, then your brain knows. It kind of cancels it out. And obviously, belief is difficult. So get around environments that can inspire belief, that can prove that recovery is possible. If you're
Yeah.
constantly, every single week, seeing people get better and better and better, something clicks in your brain. It just goes, okay, I'm literally seeing it with my eyes. That person was not walking like 3 weeks ago, or 4 weeks ago, or 6 weeks ago. Now they're functioning. Now they're driving. Now they're doing this and that. And not only that person, this other person and that person. It just starts to like click in your brain that not only is it
Yeah.
possible to recover, it's inevitable once you follow the principles, and you actually believe in it. And also just getting extra help. People can totally do this on their own. I think with the right information, but for some people, it may take years, versus getting some extra help and then doing it in a handful of months versus a handful of years. And really,
Absolutely. Yeah.
you're buying your time back, right? If there's, this is, you'll probably give an opposite answer of one of your biggest tips you shared earlier, but if there's one thing, let's say, what do you think the biggest mistake you made in recovery was that kind of lengthened it or kind of set you back? What, if you could go back and
Yeah.
identify
Well, I
one thing.
promise you're not paying me for this one, but the
Yeah,
biggest one I would say is get involved with the Academy or the Platinum or both. Um, but besides that, overthinking,
I was
overthinking
gonna
stuff.
say,
Yeah.
your big thing was your big tip was don't overthink. Like for me, that's one of my biggest tips too, because one of my biggest mistakes, actually the biggest mistake, was overthinking. Like that was just a downward
Yeah.
spiral.
And I think if I would have been in the groups, I wouldn't have overthought as much because I could have just asked my question and been had an answer instead of me trying to figure it out on my own, which I did a lot of that.
Yeah,
Um, and I wasn't always right or the best. So yeah.
yeah. Oh yeah. So, you know, now that you're a lot further along in your recovery and made tons of progress in the last even just 4 months, right? You feel like you don't even have CFS anymore. What are you able to do now? Like, what does life look like now for Tracy? Maybe paint a picture for us.
Yeah. Well, I'm working pretty much full time and uh, going out. We just actually had someone over for dinner on Friday night, went to someone else's house on Saturday night, went to someone else's house on Sunday night. Now that's unusual for us to do that much in one weekend, but yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm living pretty normally besides the exercise, which, I think I'm going to just, again, I think that was a bigger issue. I liken it to if you have a surgery, let's say you had pins in your leg, right? At some point, the leg is going to be healed, but your body is going to take longer to catch up and rebuild stamina. And that's where I feel like I am. I'm just rebuilding stamina. That's it. I
Mm.
do not have chronic fatigue syndrome anymore. I can just say that with every bit of knowing. And I don't know if I said this in this one, but in the call, people would say, "How do you know? How do you know when it's gone?" And you just know, it's just gone. That craziness, frenetic nervous system symptoms are just gone. So I don't have CFS anymore. Am I fully recovered in the sense of, I love that video. I asked you about recovery. Like, how do you know if you're fully recovered? I'm kind of, not only am I analytical, I like to make sure I use the right word. And I think the foundation of my life is probably 300% of where it was before. Like the things that I have changed, the way that I operate now is so much better. My physical stamina is not there. It's not where it was, but that's how I would say where I am now.
Yeah, yeah. I'd say
And
like,
I feel great.
yeah, I'd say one of the simplest ways to put it in terms of analogies, because I love analogies. It's like, when you get CFS, it's like you feel like you lost it all. If you had a cake in front of you, which was life, you got the cake, you got everything. When you get CFS, it's like someone takes away that cake. But as you start to rebuild your life, now you got the full cake back, and now we're just adding icing on the top. We're adding the cherry on top, which is like exercise and all of those things. But I remember just being functional again, being able to drive, work full time, hang out with my friends. I'm like, this is like what most normal people do. Like a typical person does this. So anything above this, I would be so grateful for. But now, like it's been years. I can exercise, I can travel, I can drink coffee, I can pretty much do all these things, but I had to build up to it because just like you said, you do have to build up your tolerance in the beginning, and you're actually using the same principles to add these things back in, pacing yourself properly, adding things on little by little, listening to your body because some weeks, yeah, you might get a little more tired from the workouts than the previous week, but then you just dial it back a little bit, then you go hard next week. So there's so many tools you learn throughout recovery that you're able to use in different areas of life, even with work, even with family. Great theory. Perfect example.
Yeah.
So there's so many tools you gain through recovery, which is nice. Awesome, Tracy. So this has been an amazing chat so far. Are there any other golden nuggets you want to share with the viewers and things that might be able to help them that helped you in terms of removing roadblocks on the way to recovery? Is there anything else you want to share with people?
Yeah. I think what I realized is that from what I've read, that long-term stress or childhood trauma is present in almost everybody that has chronic fatigue syndrome. So I really looked into my life, or was able to work through a lot of things. And some of the things, like I realized I was carrying the responsibility for other people's happiness and their responsibilities. Like I have no business doing that. I'm not built for that. That took a long time to work through and figure that out. I was the queen of stuffing my emotions and judging them as bad. So I learned that emotions are not bad and how to properly care for them. I had given up my voice in so many ways, and just getting to the point where I realized like what I think matters, what I want matters, what I need matters. Doesn't mean I always get it, but at least it matters. Like I had just completely given that up. I didn't have any boundaries in some particular relationships that needed to have boundaries. Like, and I didn't know how to do that in those particular spaces. And I was putting myself dead last, not even on the stove. You know, some people say I was on the back burner. I don't even think I was on the stove. And,
Yeah.
That I have learned is just wrong. Our spiritual and mental and physical foundation is paramount. Like if the rest of our life is going to come caving in like it did, if we don't, it's not selfish. It's loving ourselves enough to take care of other people. And then lastly, I was just ignoring the signs of my nervous system was giving me. The little ones, like the headaches and the needing for naps and tremors. Like that's not so little, but you go to the doctor and they tell you, oh, you have a tremor. They don't say, hey, maybe you should look into your stress. Or maybe they did and I just ignored it. But anyway, I think that those, and then also I mentioned earlier, just like working so intensely and working with adrenaline. I mean, that's like 10 things that I mentioned that I think those constructs in my life were creating a perfect storm for the stress. Like I just had all this stress. And the funny thing is I didn't think I was an anxious person.
Yeah. Most people don't.
How is that? I mean, like that is the craziest thing. Oh, I'm not anxious. And one time I did a personality test at work and it came back that I had high stress, and my husband and I both laughed. We're like, this thing, but it was just stuffed. It was stuffed and subconsciously, like I didn't even know I was doing that. So anyway, I think that is just critical to be looking to see or be aware, just to say, why is this happening or what could be causing this? And I think that it's a gift for us to be flat on our back so that we have a chance to start dealing with those things.
Yeah. And I always tell people, and I've said in so many of my videos, that CFS was the worst thing to happen to me, but also the best thing to ever happen to me, to level up who you are as a person and just evolve. A part of you, how do I say this? I was going to say a part of you has to die so another one can be reborn, but I'm going to word it differently. In order to evolve as a person, you have to go through that challenge. You have to have that thing that forces you to become better. And for me, I know for a fact that if I didn't get CFS, I would have been on this reckless path of just ignoring my emotions, overworking myself, striving for certain things that weren't really important to me. And all those things are what led me to getting CFS. But in getting CFS and learning how to recalibrate my nervous system, not only did it get me out of the illness, but it got me all the way to thriving health, to like the 2.0 version of Miguel, like way better than my previous life. Because I remember, I think all of us, even people watching this right now, when you're in the trenches, you would give anything just to have the bare minimum of just to be able to stand up or just to be able to walk outside. But as you move along in your recovery, you're like, no, we shouldn't settle. Don't just settle for getting by. Don't just settle for surviving. No, you can absolutely get to thriving health. The sky is really the limit, but obviously pace yourself on the way there.
Yeah.
Don't make the same mistakes you made to kind of put you in the hole. So there's just so
Oh,
many
I
things that
certainly tried that too. Hurry up.
yeah,
How fast can we get better?
that's another big mistake, right?
Yeah, that's a big one.
Or why is this adjustment period lasting so long? That's another one. Or
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
yeah, or
Overthinking
when will I
and
be
wanting to hurry
recovering?
it up.
Exactly. Trying to rush through recovery will only lengthen it. It literally does the opposite.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
crazy how it works. But
Yeah. Well, I'm
you know,
definitely better for it. My husband is better for it. I mean, his experience was completely different, but he took over everything. So, and then our marriage is better for it. Like the changes that happen because of it. And so that's another reason why I'm really grateful. Like I think the rest of our marriage is going to be even better because of what this did for us. So
yeah,
yeah, so I know it's hard to believe that when you're, you know, month 1 or 2 or 5 or 6 or 8.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
but
or a handful of years
there's
in,
hope.
but absolutely does get better. And Tracy, you're just one of the many shining examples of what is possible when you go all in and just really implement the principles of recovery. And like these aren't even just my principles, these are things my doctor taught me. It's just science. I'm kind of just the messenger. So for you to go in there and implement these things, obviously it wasn't easy. You put in the work. It doesn't happen overnight, but with this, it's kind of like you have to earn your life back. And once you put in the work, the sky is the limit. So for you guys watching this right now, I hope you got a ton of value out of this one. Tracy dropped so many golden nuggets and literally bullet point of the major roadblocks she had to face. And everything she listed out, these are things we actually see as coaches in people all the time. Like 99% of people have these very same things going on. So she's shared things that were roadblocks, but also things that really helped her, right? Things like not overthinking, believing in the principles of recovery, believing that recovery is possible, getting in the right environment, all these different things. It adds up. It's like a big puzzle piece or different pieces of a puzzle. You're putting them together and eventually it all clicks. When it clicks, that's like the rocket taking off for your recovery. And it's just a matter of time before you get to thriving health. So hope you guys enjoyed this one. If you resonated with any of these things, hit the like button. And actually, I want you guys to comment down below, what was your biggest takeaway from this? What was their biggest golden nugget? Either a roadblock or something you're going to implement. Comment down below. Let Tracy know what was your biggest takeaway and let us know. It's always cool to see which parts resonate with you guys the most. But if you did need some extra help, we always love helping people just like Tracy go from surviving to thriving. And we have, different programs available. Recovery Academy Platinum. If you were looking for some extra help, obviously you can recover on YouTube for free, or you can speed up the process. You could click the link and apply for the program and see if you're a good fit and see if now is the right time to get extra help to kind of put the boosters on recovery for you. So hope you guys enjoy this video. Tracy, thank you so much for spending an hour here with us and
Thank
sharing
you
your
for having
story.
me.
Yeah,
Feels
this was
great.
amazing. So for you guys watching right now, always remember that you are a thriver and you are just one mind shift away from living life with thriving health. We'll see you in the next video.